All right. Well, we have a special episode for you this time around. We have Craig Farraway of Vinyl TV, the YouTube channel. And hello, Craig. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. So I don't remember exactly how I came across your channel, or the first time I saw one of your videos a few months ago, but I was really kind of drawn in by how you approached your videos, and a lot of people online can come across as kind of snooty about vinyl, and you have to have the best equipment and all the best stuff, but your approach to it was really kind of nice. It was it was really welcoming to somebody who doesn't know all the know everything. And so
right.
So like I want to see if we can get a hold of him and talk to him.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm a little bit older than you, I think. I grew up with vinyl, and that was the method of distribution at the time. We had vinyl, 8 tracks and cassettes. And for me, vinyl was a pain in the neck back then, because you didn't have the internet. You didn't have somebody to tell you, well, this is how you line up your cartridge, this is how you set the the weight and all that.
Right.
So my records sounded pretty bad, especially toward the inner groove, and towards the end of the record. But and then so when CDs came along, we were all jumping for joy, because it's no more crackles, no more pops, no more distortion at the end of the record, and all this stuff. And then we went through the whole CD era and the MP3 era and all that, and turned the page. And I never got into a high end setup. It was just like I wanted to play my records.
Right.
And that's all it was for me. Now I had a good stereo and all that. I built my own speakers, and they sounded pretty good. But I guess what it really is some people. Most people, I think a majority of people, just want to listen to their music, and I think that's true today. I got back into vinyl not knowing that it was actually coming back into fashion. I saw a box of records at a thrift store, or whatever, as a garage sale store.
Right.
And I said, how much do you want for all these 45s? And she says, I don't know, I had $10. So I grabbed them. Oh, holy good. Because, and just, I don't want to go on too much about myself, but back in the 80s, I had all my records still, and I kept them all my Rush records and all my Zeppelin and all those good ones. And there was a flood in the basement, and I lost them all. They all got flooded with sewer water.
Oh, wow.
So I just gave up. I threw them all out. I had them all on CD anyways, and that was it. But after about 30 years, you get the itch.
Yeah.
Like, what was with these? Can they really sound good? And I started playing these 45s, and eventually got myself to the point where this sounds way better than it ever did.
Yeah.
Because now I know how to set it up because of the internet. But just like with everything else, and bringing back to the point you began this with, if it was complicated, I wouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. Like if I had to go out and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, forget it. I was sticking to CDs or whatever I was using at the time.
Right.
So the fact that I had an old turntable here that still worked, and that I could, align the cartridge, and I don't even know where this cartridge had been, and get it to sound good. Yeah, I was stoked. It's like, hey, let's get some, start collecting records again, and what it is, with records, with vinyl. No one can really explain it. It's having it in your hand.
Yes.
It's putting it on, putting the needle down, and then looking at it and going, how can this sound this good?
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that machine play that record. Wow. So my whole, my whole goal is with my vinyl TV channel is to try and friendly, gently bring people into this format again. Because a lot of new people out there who just really, some of the questions I get are so, with all due respect, they're so simple. Because people are they're like, I don't think this can be this easy. There's got to be something complicated here. No, there's not. It's not complicated at all. And so to try and, hold people's hand a little bit, and say, hey, this is all you got to do. Just take your time, do this, turn this knob, set this up, and you've got it. You don't have to spend hundreds of I mean, we can get into the whole, I mean, there's people on YouTube who really, really deep into this hobby.
Yeah, definitely.
Or if you want to call it a hobby, I mean, whatever it is. And they're spending, I mean, we won't mention any names, but I mean, $35,000 for a tone arm is, it's pretty,
a tad bit excessive.
Hey, more power to that person, but
sure.
I wouldn't want any of us to aspire to be for that to be our ultimate goal. You know what I mean? So
I'd rather spend that kind of money on like a new laptop or something,
or a sports car.
But hey, I mean, to each his own. If they think they can hear the difference, that's. Again, the whole point of this is that if it's right for you, then that's right. But I think that people like that need to also explain, hey, look, I'm a little obsessive. This is what I want. You don't need this if you want to have a good sounding turntable. Just do what is comfortable for you. I don't want people to think that, well, that's really where the goal is one day, to have a turntable the size of a refrigerator and, with a platter that weighs more than the sun, I mean.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and a motor that's halfway across the room. So, I mean, it's just, people need to really tone it down. A good turntable can cost $300 to $500. And if you want to spend more, that's fine. Yeah. But when I play my records, just to give myself a little tiny bit of credibility. I am a musician. I've been recording and playing music for almost my whole life. So, I think quite possibly I think I know what I'm hearing. And when I play my records on my $300 turntable, they sound good. Mm-hmm. I've got it set up properly. I've got modest speakers. It's all nice down here in my basement. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy them immensely. And you can too. Everybody can. With minimal budget.
Yeah, I mean, I spent $100 for my Audio-Technica turntable. I have it plugged into a pretty cheap sound bar. That's my next thing to upgrade, is to get better speakers. But
right.
But it sounds great to me, and I'm happy with it. So,
but I have Tyler's hand-me-down USB powered turntable, and when I plug it into a receiver, it sounds pretty serviceable,
These things are sounding better than earbuds plugged into an iPhone. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like I'm happy, and then I'm, and you can upgrade piecemeal, if you want to, upgrade your speakers, upgrade the player itself, you can swap out these components as you go.
Oh, yeah.
And slowly build yourself up.
And if you have a lot of money kicking around and you really are interested in doing this, you can, to a more extreme degree, you can go out and spend $10,000 on a turntable or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if that's what pleases you, then I happen to think for me, I'm glad I'm not one of those. Again, I don't want to offend anybody. I'm happy that I'm content with what I have, because otherwise you'd be miserable all the time until you had the $10,000 tone arm or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And really, I'm not miserable at all. I'm so happy with what I have, and I have no earning at all to upgrade at this point. And so.
Well, that's good. That's where as long as you're content,
that's the way it should be.
Part. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to stress that point, that people, it is simple. You don't have to spend a lot. I do think some of the, there's companies out there that I think are slightly overpricing their turntables, but so you have to look around and see, what works for you and all that. As far as, buying a new turntable, which is probably your next question, I would imagine, is, getting into this in the first place it's a little scary for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess, do you have a recommendation for what is a solid turntable? Or is it just whatever sounds good to you, or whatever fits your budget?
Well, I know what I use, and that's just the choice that I made, mm-hmm. Based on things that I like. It doesn't mean it's the best choice for everybody, but I think that something that is built well, I think a turntable should have some weight to it. Mm. It shouldn't be this. I saw somebody unboxing a turntable on YouTube. I won't tell the brand, but it was one of the brands that you've heard of most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And he had it. It was in the bag in the styrofoam. You know, he's taking it out of the package, and he was holding the turntable with one hand while he was taking the bag off with the other. And I looked at that and I thought, okay, I don't really want that turntable.
It's too light.
I think I'd like something that's a little more substantial, you know, weight to it. So I think that there's a lot of decisions to be made there, and that's what people get afraid of. You know, do I need a preamp? Do I not need a preamp? Should I get the S-shaped tone arm, straight tone arm? You know, belt drive, direct drive. There's all these options, but you know, when it really comes down to it, it kind of doesn't matter all that much in the end. As long as you get a brand name turntable that has good reviews.
Yeah.
And that's why I bought, you know, I'll mention the one I use is my Fluence RT81 is my favorite right now. It's a solid turntable. It has a beautiful look to it. It's got I do prefer the S-shaped tone arm,
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I grew up with. I'm not sure it makes a difference in sound quality, but that's just what I like.
Sure.
Other people may, you know, they may be more, you know, prefer the straight one, but and I wanted a belt drive because I'm thinking, you know, quietness. Direct drive turntables can be, you know, they can create rumble.
Okay,
So
that was going to be
sometimes.
my question. Yeah.
I mean, a good one won't. I mean, if you get, you know, Techniques SL1200, you know, no, it's not gonna. But I know the one, the Audio Technica one here that I have has a direct drive, and it does make a rumble, and I can't really use it for recording records or anything like that because that comes through.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you kind of have to be careful, and that's why I chose a belt drive because they're quiet, and you know, I just wanted that basic thing that I had when I was a teenager. Just turn it on and play records. And it's
just
it's
to
a
make
good
sure
quality.
I'm understanding this correctly, Craig, is the idea with the belt drive that because it's got that rubber belt that insulates some of the movement and the sound from actually getting to the tone arm?
Yeah. Well, see, with a direct drive turntable, the platter is actually part of the motor.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, the magnet that makes the motor run is on the turntable platter itself. So the turntable is like, you know, part of the armature of the motor.
Mm-hmm.
So if that motor has any herky-jerkiness to it at all, or any kind of a sound to it at all, it's going to come through. You know, it's going to come through. With the belt drive, of course, the motor is sort of off to the side,
mm-hmm.
and hopefully it's mounted in such a way that it's dampened and, you know, it has some sort of a rubber gasket or something preventing it from vibrating the the body of the turntable.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you're correct. It just isolates the platter from the motor a little bit more.
Okay.
Some really more expensive turntables have the motor separate, like it's a separate entity altogether.
Like outside of the enclosure?
Yeah,
Wow.
or even like a separate thing altogether, like, you know, a separate piece.
Oh, wow. Okay.
that sits alongside the turntable. And the whole point in that, again, is to isolate the motor from the platter.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, again, look, I'm not a bat. I can't hear everything. But my turntable, the motor is built into the turntable, but it's off to the side. I don't hear any motor noise at all when I play my records. And I have some very quiet, clean, classical records here that have, you know, very, very quiet passages, and I don't hear any motor noise. So, you know, I think if that's what you've achieved with your turntable, then you've got it. You've got that aspect of it down.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go and spend, again, you know, you don't have to go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a turntable.
You can if you feel like it, but it's a hobby that you can go as deep into as you feel like.
Well, you know how it is. Like, so you buy a car or something, you buy something expensive, and you'll go, well, all right, I'm just gonna go the extra because it'll make me feel better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll regret it later if I don't, you know, if I don't go the extra, spend the extra $1,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I've got the money, I'll just do it. You know, then I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what makes somebody happy, then hey, no reason to look down our nose at them any more than they should look down their nose at us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, I just bought a set of electronic drums, and I was, you know, thinking, oh, I'll go the extra mile, get the better pads and the better cymbals, and I'm happy with that. You know.
Yeah.
So this is another example of, you know, but it's comfort. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm comfortable with the equipment that and it's, you know, I'll have to show it one day on my channel, my YouTube channel. It's not the best setup. I mean, I'm using a microwave stand to have my turntable on. It's it works. It's not
Yeah.
It's not pretty, but it holds the turntable and it doesn't move and it doesn't sway and it's level, and I think that's really all it needs to be.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it works perfect.
it's a wonderful example. I love it.
As kind of a total newbie into getting into vinyl, I see a lot of times where I'll be looking at records online about like new release, and a lot of them like talk about 180 gram vinyl as like kind of a big selling point. Like, is that like, what does that mean exactly? Is that just the weight of it that keeps it stable?
Yeah, it's the amount of vinyl that they're using to press the record, to press the disc. So I think the standard weight is 100 grams, is it? Or it does vary, but they're kind of flimsy. You can take them and you can go wah, 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 you can flip them around and bend them and stuff. Of course, 180 grams are they're thicker. They look more like the ones on the Flintstones. They're a little bit, they're a little bit thicker. And now, as to what the advantage of that is, they're going to have a different. This is, I'm just going to go out and guess a few things here. Sure. They're going to have a different resonance frequency because there's more vinyl there. So they could be quieter. Because they're not gonna. I mean, you put a really thin record on your turntable, it's, even if you flick it with your finger, like you tap on it, you can hear it going bow bow bow. You can hear the resonance. Yeah. If you do that with a 180 gram record, it's more of a thud 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 than a barum 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 sound. If you don't mind my sound effects,
not at all. Please, they're welcome.
So if that makes any difference at all, I don't know, but that's a fact, is that they just are more solid. Do they sound better? Well, that's a very broad question, because I have some 180 gram records that don't sound so good, and I have some normal records that sound great. So some people think it's a bit of a gimmick. Mm-hmm. Some people think that it's an improvement. I don't know whether the verdict is really out there. I think that everybody, as with a lot of things, people have to do their own experiments.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are tons of other factors like how it was mastered and
everything.
Everything matters. So
I mean, you could take a 200 gram pressing and have it crappy master. Right. It's going to sound bad.
I would wager that the preparation of the audio probably has more of an effect on the finished product than the weight of the record by a long shot.
I would think that you could easily have a standard weight, vinyl record that could easily outsound a 180 gram vinyl record if it's done properly, and if the 180 gram is not. I have a 180 gram record, it's a Supertramp. It's Breakfast in America, and it's 180 grams. It's a new pressing. It sounds awesome.
Yeah,
but the record itself, in between the songs, there's a noise, and it's repetitive. It goes around and around as the record spins. It keeps it sounds like ocean waves or something. And so there goes your 180 gram theory out the window. I mean, I've got the original pressing, which is a little more crackly and poppy, but it doesn't have that ocean sound on it. Mm-hmm. So that's a very difficult area. Okay. I think it's nice to take a nice heavy robust record out of the package and put it on, and it's got a lot of weight to it, and it doesn't bend or warp as easily.
Yeah.
But again, I have some 180 gram records that came warped.
Yeah.
I was actually
right out of the package.
That is actually one of the things I was going to ask you today, because I just I ordered a I'm not sure if you're familiar with the band Paramore, but I got their latest album in the mail today, and it looks like it's a little bit warped. It's brand new, straight out of the plastic. So
yeah,
is that something that's like really bad? Should I be trying to return it, or is it something I can adjust or tweak?
What kind of warp is it? Is it like a there's the ones where it looks like a dish, where it's higher in the center than it is on the outer sides.
I was watching the needle, and it looked like the needle was raising up and down like waves on an ocean.
Yeah.
You know, so
as long as it's not obsessive, of course, that's what's happening there is as the record is lifting the tone arm up, it's increasing the tracking force. And then as the record lets the stylus down, it's decreasing the tracking force. So that's, physically what's happening is that as the warp is going up and down, your tracking force is going up and down. And that could potentially affect the sound quality. And, of course, the way the record wears, but you can't do anything about that because it's the way the record is. So you could find methods of, straightening it. There's also... that's physically what's happening. Whether you can hear anything or not. If you can't hear anything, but you have to have some sort of a
like a baseline
affection, yeah, and you have to have some. You have to think about your cartridge and how you want it thrown around. If you want it being, having that happen to it, if it's something that looks a little bit severe, then it probably won't hurt it. But I think that's up to your own judgment. If it doesn't affect the sound any, according to your ears, then I wouldn't worry too much. But then you can get some of these clamps, the record clamps that go in the center. I personally would be looking for one that sort of clamps, like screws on and tightens on, rather than the ones that weigh 5 pounds.
Okay.
Because I don't really want to put a strain. That's one of the advantages of having, one of those more expensive turntables with the bigger motors. People say, well, this big motor is going to spin nice and smooth and we're not going to get any wow and flutter. Okay, fine. But also that big motor is capable of, it's got a lot of torque. And so you want to put nice heavy weight in the center of your record to hold, that can help the warp a little bit.
Okay.
But on my belt drive turntable, I don't think with the little DC motor that's built in, I really don't want to put a 5-pound weight in the middle of my turntable. So I'm looking at something that's probably going to be more something that clamps and screws on and tightens down onto the record so that it doesn't create any strain on the belt and on the motor. So you could look into something like that, see if that improves the record. You could also just put it under a big book for a while and see if that flattens it out. So normally if it's just a minor warp, it's not anything to worry about. But if it's making your tone arm jump up and down and you can physically see your stylus is being compressed and expanded and closer and further from the cartridge body, then it's something you might want to look at.
All right, sounds good.
Quick
that's my opinion.
Question on that. Wow, is that the actual pitch modulation as it's going around with the warp? The wow, like with the pitch rising up and down.
Potentially that could affect it. Yes. Physically, yes. I mean, when you're talking physics, sure it is. Sure, it's absolutely creating a pitch variation because you're not going straight around in a circle anymore. You're going up and down. So your velocity, your tracking velocity is changing with the warp. Whether you can hear that or not, some people can.
I've got one record that I actually played through today that has a pretty severe warp in the same direction. You can hear it. It goes somewhere between an eighth tone and a quarter tone, up and down. Specifically, you can hear it on the sustained notes. I'm thinking I might have to give it the old book treatment then. Yeah,
the old book treatment. There's videos on YouTube how to flatten out your records, and I think since you can buy things too. You can. I wouldn't suggest heating them up, or if you can get them in a warm room or something, and put a nice big heavy, put them under 2 pieces of cardboard so they don't get damaged, and put some. There's ways of doing it. I've never done it myself, but certainly if it's a valuable record, then or just get a new one. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot and report back.
Yes, yeah. So and there's also sometimes the hole. I've heard. Records where the hole isn't in the center.
Really?
And so somebody was playing a record on one of the live broadcasts that I sometimes log into, and they were playing Fleetwood Mac Rumors or something, and off of LP. So it really there's not really any way it could have been off center. Like if you put a 45 on without the adapter, you try to line it up the best you can. This was an LP, and it was clearly going. I'm like, there's a run of records that was the holes were pressed were
Like
punched in off center. Yeah,
like a misprint kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's probably a whole bunch of them out there.
Well, and I would imagine it wouldn't have to be off center by too far for it to be actually pretty audible. No,
it wouldn't. That's done manually. Somebody has to physically look in through a microscope and
Really?
spin the record and get it right in the middle. If they're having a bad day, then that's not going to be perfect.
I never realized it was so manual. I just assumed it was a machine that did that press.
I mean, these days I don't know, but I know that back in the day, and certainly when vinyl started coming back, and they were using the old machines still and all the old equipment, there's a guy there that, or a woman. Sorry, I can be careful these days. There's a person there who is doing a lot of these things manually just to make sure that it's getting done. Even like when they're cutting the records into the lacquer, there's a guy there or a gal there, a person there looking at that groove under a microscope to make sure that it's being cut properly. Mm-hmm. And that it's going to work, and it's a human that has to monitor these things these days. So if that's done wrong, and believe me, I have another Supertramp record, and I'm going to be talking about this on my channel. Crime of the Century. I bought a reissue, and the grooves somebody made a boo boo, and there's parts of that record where those grooves they touch.
Oh no!
And you can hear. You can hear that big drum beat. You can hear it on the rotation beforehand, and it doesn't just sound like a pre-echo. It's like a crackle.
Yeah,
it comes through on the groove. Exactly one revolution before the big doom, the big drum beat.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm going to look at it under a microscope, and I'm going to do a video on this. I believe very strongly that those two grooves they crossed or they touched.
Yeah.
And somebody made a boo boo. Now here's the thing. I looked at the serial number in the dead wax in the middle of the record where the needle goes when the record's over. There's always a serial number there.
Okay.
Yes.
And I ended up buying another copy of the record. The first one I bought was a box set. It was a box set that had a couple of different records in it. And the second one, I just bought the record by itself. And that record, same album, it doesn't have this issue. It plays perfectly fine all the way through. When you look at the serial number on the first record, on the second record, they're identical except for one letter. Their very last, one's an A and the other record is a B. So they recut that record at some point, knowing that there was a mistake.
Huh.
And so there's a whole crap load of faulty, Supertramp Crime of the Century records out there floating around. And then they recut the record, and they had to put a different serial number on it. They just off by one number, and that was it.
Huh.
So
interesting.
Just a little interesting thing there. You can have a little bit of fun with those serial numbers if
I've always wondered about those. Yeah.
And as somebody here who's pretty plebeian to all this, the serial number, I'm assuming something gets pressed into the lacquer, and then that same serial number gets pressed to wax or to vinyl for the rest of it. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, and every record, every lacquer has a unique serial number, and it's actually handwritten usually. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the engineer will put a little, like a symbol or something, or a little initials. He could put his girlfriend's initials in there. They could put anything in there really that's not going to be, I'm being serious.
Yeah.
They've got to put the serial number, and if they're in a silly mood, they can put a little heart or something. They can do whatever they want there as long as it doesn't convey any information that shouldn't be conveyed. Mm-hmm. So I've seen little symbols and different things on there. Just don't know what they mean, but somebody was trying to tell someone something, and it's like a little encryption or something. Yeah. So
secret message.
But now you can get into those serial numbers, and you can actually find out a lot by reading them, but it's complicated. I know that Michael Fremer, he has some knowledge of that, and he can talk about that quite a bit. But it's not an easy thing to do. You kind of have to look into it and figure it out. It's not something that it's not just a cut and dried thing. But
it seems like one of those things where you'd have to really dig to get the information, just with how many pressings there have been of how many records over the years.
Well, there's websites, I'm sure, that you can enter the serial number, you can enter the record, the title of the record, and the artist, and serial number that's written on the vinyl. And I'm sure, I haven't done it myself, so I'm a little bit ignorant about this, but I'm sure you could find out a lot of information about that pressing just by knowing that serial number. And there's probably a lot of databases online that have information. I haven't done it myself, but something to think about.
Yeah, definitely be looking into that.
Yeah, I know Discogs is a big one where if you go on it, you can look at all the different variations on every, if this is a reissue, what year it was, and all that stuff. So that one's I've seen a lot of stuff on. Yeah,
so it's good to pay attention to those little numbers in there if you really want to know about the.
Yeah, for sure. Are you familiar with like kind of some of the gimmicky things that people do? At least I don't know if they did them back in the day, but nowadays there's a lot of things like holograms and multicolor and liquid filled and stuff like that. Do you have any opinions on those?
Sure. I do have a holographic record. It's a Rush 2112.
Nice.
And it's got the star, the 5-point star in the dead wax on side B, and it's rotating around. It's really cool. Yeah. There's these holographic. I've seen ones that get the Star Wars, whatever, one of the ships from the and there's different ones, and you know what? It's fun. I mean, vinyl is as it is. It's a very physical medium, and of course it can be visual. When you get a record that's got a beautiful picture on it, or it's done tie-dye, or it's just a different color, or designs like that. Yeah, sure. I mean, those are fun. I mean, don't they just look awesome when they're on your turntable and you pull them out and you go, look at this. As long as they sound good. Some of the picture records, I don't know if they still do it this way, but some of those there's actually a film on top of the vinyl that has the picture on it. Okay. And that film isn't necessarily the best thing for playing back.
I would imagine that would dampen the sound, yeah?
Yeah, they're noisy.
Yeah.
So they're not really made for playing, per se. But I think there's newer techniques out there, and I'm not familiar with them, I can't say, but where they can do it so that the picture is underneath or something, and it sounds good. I know that the different colored vinyl records they just throw a bunch of, PVC pellets, of different colors in, and they make their vinyl biscuit, and it looks like a tie-dye shirt. And then when they press it out into a record, it just does what it does. However it turns out, that's how it is. And I think there's a lot of people who've got that quite down pat, where they can say, okay, I want it pink on the edges and I want it, blue in the middle or whatever. Mm-hmm. They can kind of, they make the vinyl biscuit, which is the biscuit is the thing that's shaped like a hockey puck sort of, and it's what goes into the press that gets, squashed out into a record.
Right.
And if they can get that thing to be different colors, then, it's still vinyl, it's still PVC, it's still polyvinyl chloride. So the colored records can sound as good as the black ones. Mm-hmm. It's the picture ones you got to kind of be careful of sometimes.
Have you seen, I don't own any myself, but I've seen online like liquid-filled ones, where there's like, you can see the liquid sloshing around?
I have not seen that.
Okay.
I'm looking that up right now.
I would be interested in knowing what one of those sounds like, but with the liquid sloshing around in there, but
I would have a hard time imagining that it wouldn't affect the sound in some way.
I know that the liquid, it has the centrifugal force where it spreads out to the outside while it's spinning. So I was just curious. Maybe once it gets going, it kind of balances itself out, but I always kind of wondered about those.
I haven't seen one, and I would boil that down to just something that just looks cool and is a lot of fun. But if I was pressing a record myself and I was more concerned about sound quality, I'd probably stick to the solid record. But these things are, again, they're fun. And hey, vinyl is fun. It is fun from the very moment you pull that record off the shelf until you play it and then put it back on the shelf and put it away. It's all fun. I mean, it's a hell of a lot more fun than
Christmas present.
Sure, it's a hell of a lot more fun than pressing a button on a phone.
Oh yeah,
and everybody knows that. I mean, that's just the way it is. Some people are saying, well, you guys are going through a lot of trouble. You got to clean these things, and you got a stylist to worry about, and you got to do this and this and this. And all I'm doing is I got my phone and my earbuds. I just push, tap to something on the screen, and away it goes. And it's just no fun. I mean, I didn't listen to music for years very much because when MP3s and all that came along, it was just so easy to just go and sit down somewhere and click, boom, you got music, you know. Yeah. Now, I mean, going, you know, puttering around down here in the basement, you know, doing whatever, making beer or something like that, or you know, and I'm going to put on a record. And it's a different experience. Even I've thought of this too, like, you know, you can take a record and you can record it onto your computer, and then you can play it back off of your hard drive. If it's done properly, it's going to sound exactly the same. I don't know. Some people are going to disagree with that, but I'll tell you, I've done tests with oscilloscopes and everything. If you record a record properly onto a computer digitally, the digital copy is going to sound identical to the record that was recorded from.
Because
for some reason
of digital, it's going to capture every one of the imperfections and intricacies that make the vinyl sound like a vinyl. It's a faithful reproduction of that source material.
It is, and there are your folks out there who are going to, but it's digital, and there's stair stepping, and there's gaps, and there's information missing, and
can't hear that.
That is not necessarily true when the digital file gets played back.
Yeah.
There are algorithms that, you know, fill that stuff. It's really not the way it works. There's no missing information. Now, since we're briefly on that topic, I'll get back to my other one in just a sec. CDs do cut off at 20 kilohertz. Mm-hmm. Okay, very, very sharply, actually. Mm-hmm. Now, most of us can't hear that high, but there are some people who believe that, you know, even though you can't hear the frequencies, you can still feel them, or you can still perceive them somehow. Okay, I'll bite. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then if you're going to record your vinyl onto your computer, you know, to back it up and to remember how it sounded when it was brand new, just use a higher sample rate. Just go to 48 or 96 kilohertz. Yeah. Then you've got lots of room to record all those frequencies that you can't hear.
Yeah.
So you know there's ways of doing it now. Now that's all fine and good, and I could have my whole record collection on my computer if I wanted to. But what fun is that?
Mm-hmm. Right.
To go over and walk over and double click on an icon and have it play. You know, I even thought of hey, you know, you get a package of blank CDs, and you know, record some of your favorite records onto CD. And I don't mean like, you know, I mean seriously, get the needle drop onto the CD.
Yeah.
So that when you play that CD, you hear the needle being put down on the record. It's still a physical medium. Mm-hmm. So you take the CD out, you put it in the little tray, you close the tray, and on goes your record. It's kind of like playing a record, but not really. But it's closer to having a physical relationship with your music than an MP3 is anyway. So,
well, I mean, I think that is the whole beautiful thing about playing music off of an LP is that tactile experience, right? It's not, you know, talking to your Amazon Alexa and telling it to turn on music. You walk up, you have to aim, you have to drop the needle, and yes, it's something that becomes rote, it becomes easy, but it's still something you have to physically engage in, and that, I think, brings you one step closer to the music. You can't fast forward past stuff. You actually have to sit down and grapple with an album, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
And once you put that record on, you know, you're hard-pressed to interrupt it. I always feel bad. You know, the phone rings or something, I have to lift a tone arm up. Oh, jeez. And I'd interrupt this thing. You know,
like somehow you're being rude to the record in a way, right?
Yeah, you're in. And you know, that's not going to get. When you put it back down, it's not going to be in the exact same spot. And it's jeez, may as well start it all over again. With an MP3, it's not really like that. So, you know, it's all about for people who aren't into vinyl, who think that, you know, we're just being silly. It's an experience that you can't describe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I will tell you a short story. You know, with the experience that I had with my son. This was a few years ago. He was probably 16 years old or 17, and you know, he knew I had a turntable, and he wasn't really interested in all of that, you know. And so one day, you know, he comes downstairs. He goes, "Hey, Dad, you know, I'm kind of bored. You feel like hanging out?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. Come on down." You know, I gave him a beer or whatever, and I says, "Look." You know, he says, "Yeah, I heard some Pink Floyd on YouTube. I was kind of interested in, you know, listening to it." And I said, "Well, you know what? You haven't heard. If you want to say that you've listened to Pink Floyd, the first thing you need to do is listen to Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
Once you've done that, I'll give you a badge. You're a Pink Floyd listener. Until you do that, you're not there yet. So he said, okay. So I got my 180 gram, Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon record out, and I put it on, and he was sitting right beside the turntable, and we were listening to it. It was turned up pretty loud, and he kept staring. He kept looking at the turntable. He kept looking at it, like staring at it. Mm-hmm. And at the end of side one, and that woman is screaming, and then all the beautiful, whatever that song's called, I can't remember.
It's a great gig.
Yeah. When side one is over, I lift up the tone arm, and he looks at me, he goes, and this is a true story. He looks me right in the eye, and he goes, Dad, I understand. Those were his exact words. He looked me straight in, he said, Dad, I understand now. Yeah. And he's turned that sucker over. Let's hear side B. Nice. So we listened to it, and he watched it, and he watched that thing. He says, Dad, I'm hearing frequencies I haven't heard before. He's listening to his computer, MP3s and all that, YouTube. He says, I've never heard these frequencies in my life, except in real life. I mean, of course, but off of a record or off of a sound source. Yeah. He said, I can't believe the frequencies I'm hearing. Yeah. Because he's, young. Wow. He's still got all of his hearing, unlike us. Yeah. So that's his experience. So I went out and I bought him a turntable, and he's never looked back.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
It took one record.
Yeah.
And of course,
it needs to be the right record, which
I did pick the right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But so for anybody who might be listening to this show, who's not into it yet and doesn't really understand it, you have to have the experience of your own. Let somebody give you a record and let you put it on. Mm-hmm. You put the stylus down. You do the work. And then you step back from it and you watch it. You watch it go. And then we'll see how you feel about it then,
Yeah.
So,
I will say real quick, it's kind of on the same area as like kind of some of the gimmicky stuff, and as like a good, as like a first record experience. One of the first records that I got was Jack White's Lazaretto, and one of the selling points on that is there's a lot of kind of those extra things. There's some holograms. They play around with. Like with one side of the record is glossy vinyl, and the other side is more matte vinyl. Oh. It's really interesting. You should look it up if you're not familiar with it. One of the record on one side, you start on the outside, obviously, and work your way in, but then the other side starts on the inside and works its way out.
I've heard of it. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that fun? You can't do that with an MP3.
Yeah. There's both sides have lock grooves on them, so if you don't pick up the needle, it just sits there forever and has kind of just a wow sound, but kind of like makes you go, oh yeah, I need to go pick up that record and flip it over.
I've also heard of ones that have more than one groove on them. Of course, the records only have one groove normally.
Yes, that's one of the things that's on this one.
So depending on where you drop the stylus, it's going to play a different song, which is something that we're used to with those old See and Say. I don't know if you're young enough for that, but you pull the string and it plays a big. One of them's Big Bird, the other one's Cookie Monster. And it's just this little record in there with about 5-6 different grooves on it, and depending on where the stylus falls down, it's going to play that groove. So.
Yeah, I know. For this one on the B side, it starts off. There's it's got a split groove like that, and it's the same song. But one side is the acoustic guitar intro, and the other side is more the electric guitar intro. And then the grooves will meet in the.
They join.
They join together, and so it's kind of cool. I mean, it might fall into the gimmicky thing a little bit, but I thought it was really cool overall. There's actually hidden songs underneath both of the labels, so if you you have to peel off the label to get to them, but.
This sounds like Mario with all the hidden compartments, the hidden
it's the warp
caves
zone,
and everything.
Yeah. I mean, at least look it up. They have a video on their website where they go over all the different unique features to it. But it's Jack White Lazaretto, and it looks like you can still buy it from him directly at like $22. So it's
that's just so fun, you know. And here we are, we're laughing at it. Even that's how much fun it is. We're not even playing the thing. It's cool. And also something that's really exciting too is that the technology of making these records is getting better.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are in 2019. These things were invented, early 1900s or even before?
Yeah, late 1800s.
I mean, yeah. So, when they died out in the early 80s, in the mid 80s, they were at a certain point where it's, they sound good, great. But now here we are, 30 years later, and we've got just better ways of making materials. And some of the records that I have, I mean, I happen to be a big fan of Rush, and I have the the reissues that came out a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Some have quite a few of them. They were instead of cutting the record into, of course, what they you guys already know this, but for your listeners, they cut the original record into a lacquer. It's a disc it's a metal disc that's covered in lacquer, which is like a sort of a nail polish. It's very soft, plasticky stuff, and they carve the grooves into that, and then they make copies of that, and that's how they stamp out all the records. But in this case, they didn't use a lacquer disc to cut the grooves. Because did you know that an hour once they cut that initial disc, they've got to get that processed real quick, because that lacquer it's got an elasticity to it, and those grooves that were just cut will actually relax after a while, and the sound will degrade. You leave that thing sitting around for a couple days, it's not going to sound as good as it would have if you dealt with it immediately. So, there's things to be thought about there. But these records I have here, these Rush ones, and some of them they're out there these days coming out, they're not carved into lacquer, they're carved into, I think it's copper.
Because it's a soft metal.
Yeah, and so copper, they can go right to stampers with that. They can make a mother and then go right from the mother to the stamper. There's a stage in between that's avoided because, they don't have to preserve the master as much because it's not made of, a plastic that's slowly going to, elasticize itself back to, before it was cut.
Yeah.
The copper will stay, when it's cut, it'll stay like that. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, these records, and I'm not saying they're all like this, because every time there's we were talking earlier about the 180 gram and all that. Yeah, sure, there can be bad copies of 180 gram records, just like there can be bad copies of these copper. I think it's DMM, direct metal mastering. Is what it's called. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this can be done badly, just like anything else can. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, these particular records that I have here, they're done very, very well, and it's so quiet in between the songs that it almost sounds like you're just playing back the reel to reel, tape. That is, other than the odd pop, of course, you can't avoid that. But very, very, very quiet. And also, somebody commented on one of my videos the other day and said something about there's a new technology. I don't know much about it. HD vinyl.
What?
I think I've read something about it.
I don't know anything.
Really know enough,
yeah, I don't know anything about that. But whatever it is, it could bring promise to this, or it could just die off, just like everything. The other thing, if you don't mind, that I've heard is records that are recorded in DBX.
Like
and
Dolby.
It's like a Dolby, yeah. It's different, but it's a noise reduction where they take the sound and they compress it. That's a bad word, I know, but they compress it in such a way that it's reversible. They can uncompress it exactly the way it was compressed. So they compress the sound and they record it on the vinyl like that. It takes up less space, and it's easier because they don't have to record it as loud. They don't have to pitch the grooves as far apart. And then when you play it back, if you have a DBX unit, a decoder, the decoder will reverse what was done in the first place. Yeah. But in doing that, it also gets rid of all the noise.
Yeah.
Because they're boosting the lower sounds up, high, so that when there's a quiet sound, it's being recorded loudly. So when you play it back, it's being lowered back down to its original level. And in doing that, you're also lowering the noise that inherently that records have.
Yeah.
And I've heard one of these, and boy, it sounded great. I can't believe they didn't build this. They built it into tape decks and tape recorders.
For sure.
Why didn't they build it into turntables?
And now they are. Yeah, I'm reading up on it right now. You can get 30% more playtime on one side of the record. That is just because of the way that they're doing the compression in. But as soon as it unencodes that is an incredible idea.
Why isn't there a button? on your turntable,
right?
That says DBX or whatever they want to, whatever. I don't know if they can, but whatever. And then just if the record says that on the front, oh, this one was recorded in that. So you just press your button, and you've got it's almost going to sound like a CD, an analog CD. How's that for you? How does that sound?
Pretty wild.
Yes, come on, people, let's get this show on the road here. We've got the technology. And how about a declicker?
Yeah,
anyone can put a record on the computer, record it on, and get Audacity out, and you can take all the clicks and pops out.
Oh yeah,
I've done it, and it sounds amazing. Well, where's the button for that on the turntable?
Because there's no reason that can't happen on the fly. It would only need like a 5 millisecond listen ahead, and ta-da.
Right, you can do this absolutely. So, you just, and you can have a button that says, don't do any of this. I want analog out of the way. I don't want any of that.
Just a button that says raw.
Yeah, raw. That's your choice, for all the purists out there. Yeah. And I could be a purist if I want to be. Mm-hmm. But, this is stuff that if they want to keep vinyl on the table, pardon the pun, somebody might want to start implementing some of these cool features. And then the record companies, of course, then what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to make 2 copies of the same record because one's going to be raw and one's going to be encoded with, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's something that they might not want to do, but it could keep this, this format going. Really.
Yeah.
Let's face it. It's silly. We're playing records. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
What are we doing? I mean, I've always imagined some alien coming down from outer space and looking down and going, guys, look how they listen to music. They got these black discs. They put the needle on it. We're turning around right now. Let's get the hell out of here. So,
well, I think it's funny that you should make that particular analogy because what did we decide to send out into the universe on Voyager but a freaking record?
Yeah. Well, they probably got that, and they probably they're playing frisbee with it.
What is this drawing about the stylus mean? What is this?
Well, let's get out of here. We'll come back in 1,000 years.
Maybe they'll have figured out digital formats.
Yes. Well, I was just going to say, this kind of brings me full circle back to what we were talking about in the beginning, sort of, with the high end audio and all that stuff. And you got I'm going to put myself out there. This is my opinion. This opinion does not reflect the opinions of this podcast. These guys are spending tens of thousands of dollars on a tone arm, okay?
Yeah.
And the turntable's worth $75,000, and to play a record. Mm-hmm. You're playing a record. Come on. How much else more do you think you can get out of a record than just, what you're going to get out of it on a decent turntable? I mean, what more are you going to get out of that thing? It's a record, for Pete's sakes. I mean, it's just it gets kind of humorous a little. But I don't want to mock anybody. I would love to hear one of these really, really expensive turntables. I would really love to.
I would love to hear one. I would hate to
own listen
one.
to one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a boat.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't want to touch it.
I should buy a boat. That's the, But I mean, I think the strongest argument that I have for vinyl, I mean, aside from any conversations about quality or any of that long-standing argument, is just that I feel like the art of listening to an album as a unit has really gone by the wayside in the digital era, and I feel like it has been to the detriment of the listeners, but also to the detriment of people who are putting out records, because a lot of times people are not even considering the flow of their record as they write and record it, because they know no one's going to listen to it in order for the most part anyway. And I feel like records force you to actually sit down and think about the narrative of your record and really the journey you go on from start to finish. And I feel like that is the best gift that they give to the listening experience.
That's a very, very valid point, and you're right. And the attention span of younger people, and I listen. I have kids too, so I got nothing against. I got nothing against younger people, but I'm just saying that the attention span, because they're allowed to just click off of a song and start the next song, and I don't want to hear that. Here, they got their friends are going, hey, listen, I got this new song. They'll play the first verse, and then okay, that's over now. Because they just want to show that they have the song. They don't want to listen to it. They just want to show it, But Yeah, you're right. And with the record, yeah, you don't want to be dropping your stylus all over that record. I mean,
No.
it's just not something that. I mean, even now, I've put on thousands of records in my lifetime. I'm sure of it. And every time I drop that stylus, I'm like,
Yep.
don't mess this up.
Every time.
So I don't want to. I really don't want to lift it up. I want to. It's got to stay there until it's done. You know.
Yep.
You're right. And the albums have lost their continuity because of the artists don't expect people to listen to the songs in the order that shuffle was the worst thing that ever came along for that.
Yep.
The iPod shuffle was, now you can shuffle can you imagine listening to, Rush has a lot of concept albums,
Right.
if you listen to it in the wrong order, you're just not going to get it,
Well, and it's just the even when you shuffle your whole iPod, there's no sense of continuity at all. Where I went directly from, we'll say an AC/DC song to an Adele song, and I'm like, I can't hang with that tonal shift,
Well, even with radio, of course, radio is a virtual shuffle of songs.
Sure.
But I think they program the material so that it flows fairly well together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't hear a whole album, but you used to, but not these days. But you put that iPod on shuffle, or now it's your phone or whatever. You're going to get, who knows? One minute you're listening to Barry Manilow, and next minute you're listening to Nirvana or whatever. So it's kind of, it could jerk you. It could you don't want to cause any seizures or anything like that.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
Yeah.
You take an album like Fleetwood Mac Rumors, which is one of the that thing. Even the story behind that record is just incredible. Everyone's breaking up as they're recording. They're singing into a microphone together. Meanwhile, they're in the middle of a divorce. It's just crazy. But if that record, it has a flow. The songs, the order of the songs were carefully chosen, and it's an experience. It's a journey. I love Supertramp Breakfast in America. That album has a journey to it. It's kind of like watching a movie. You can tell when you're getting toward the end. It's just
You can
the
feel
last song on the
third
album.
act. Yeah.
Yep. The last song on the record lets you down easy,
Yeah.
It tells you the story's over. It's just, there's so much to be said about listening to an entire album, especially ones from back then, because they were made that way.
Yeah.
Not
they
so
were
much
written
today,
that
but
way. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, okay. Just a knee-jerk question here, but if you had to recommend 2 or 3 records that really help to underscore the vinyl experience, if you need to be convinced by vinyl, what are the records?
well, this is going to reflect my musical taste, but
That's fine.
Sure.
that's okay. If you're asking me,
Yeah.
I will tell you that the first one that comes to mind is Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon, and that's because of the experience my son had.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That record's got so many textures and sounds on it.
Yeah.
Everything from the alarm clocks to the heartbeat, all of the different sounds and synth sounds. And sometimes you're watch that record play and you just think,
how's that all
can
getting
those
out of
sounds? Yeah, how can those sounds be recorded on that black thing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. I really like Rush Moving Pictures.
there? Okay.
I have it, and it just sounds great on vinyl. It just climbs out of that record, and it just grabs you by the throat and goes, look, you're gonna listen to this, and it's just great if you like progressive rock music.
Sure.
Number 3, I have a Brahms. Is it Beethoven or Brahms? I can't remember which one. One of the classical records that I have. I could go over and dig it out, but let's just say that it's a classical recording of, I believe it's Brahms.
Mm-hmm.
And you put that on, and this record must be 50 years old. I don't know, 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody must have got it in a Columbia House thing, and they never played it because it's like, what the hell is this? I'm not playing this. So I got it from a thrift store.
Mm-hmm.
You put that on, and what the heck is this? I mean, it's very quiet in some spots, and then all of a sudden,
Violently loud.
it's filling the room with this wonderful. And you again look at the record and go, how How is that coming from there? And if, it's a very, very clean record. And I've played it live on I do a broadcast every Friday night. Mm-hmm. I played one of these at the beginning, and the chat room was just going crazy. Mm-hmm. This, wow, listen to that. It sounds awesome. Uncompressed. I didn't do any compression on it. I just let it go, and it was just... So there's three angles, three directions of, music that I thought was, for me, very influential as far as listening to vinyl. So I know with my son, Dark Side of the Moon, he couldn't believe it. And I think if you could stomach that as a young person, give it a whirl. Mm-hmm. That's what I'd say.
Dark Side of the Moon has been on my list to get on vinyl for a while now. I just need to bite the bullet and get it.
Yeah. Amazon, baby. Yeah. There you go.
Well, Tyler, when you pick that up, let me know. I'll pour some
You'll
whiskey and I'll come over from 1,200 miles away. Maybe we'll do it when I'm in town or something. But
yeah.
Well, Tyler, can I pose the same question to you? Were there, if you were to list 2 or 3 records that have really made a big influence on you, specifically for vinyl?
I might have to think about it for a while. But I mean, that Lazaretto one was one that really just drew me in. Of like, okay, I want to get into vinyl just so I can handle this thing and play with it and try out all those little quirks and details. I don't know if I could. I'd have to sit down and think about a couple more, but that Lazaretto was really interesting for me.
I know that for me personally, one of the ones that really pulled me in at a young age was when my father played Dave Brubeck's Time Out for me, which is probably, for my money, one of the best jazz albums on the planet. But that... Yeah,
I can understand that. I can relate to that for sure. Now, hold on. Where's my pen? I got to write that down. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, because that one that might have had more to do with the content than anything else. It was such a musically interesting record, but it just sounds so at home on vinyl.
Some of the older recordings, don't they sound so good on vinyl?
Yeah,
I've got some Beatles pressings here that were taken very good care of, and I don't know. They sound good on analog. Not that there's anything wrong with digital. I have to stress that I don't mind a good digital recording when it's done right.
Yeah, it's just a different experience. It's that sort of unquantifiable next factor,
Yeah, and even vinyl aside, some of these very simple recordings from back in the 50s and 60s, where they had like one ribbon microphone, and they instead of having like 12 microphones or whatever, and they had them placed all over the instruments all over the room, they had one microphone, and they had to place the instruments in the room at different distances from that microphone. Yeah. That's their mix. That's
how distance was your mixing. Louis, the Kingsman.
Yeah,
great example.
They're mixing in the room. They're not mixing on a board. Yeah. And some of those recordings, my God, and you had to be an artist. You had to be a recording genius to be able to do that. I mean, I did it once. I was in a band. We tried to do it, but and some of these people who were engineers back then, they had to do that, And sort of nowadays, it's like I'm not knocking modern technology, because believe me, as a musician and a recording guy myself, I couldn't have done a lot of the recordings that I've done if it weren't for having the technology that we have today. Because I can't afford a 24-track tape recorder and all that stuff.
I'd love to.
But there's just really something to be said about a guy and a microphone in a room and a bunch of musicians, and he has to put everything where it's going to be so that it's going to sound good. That's an art in itself.
That's really bordering on black magic.
Yeah. So you got to hand it to these older engineer guys. Probably a lot of them are gone today, but there's just a really very high respect for some of these older recordings that they didn't have all the microphones and things that we do today.
Oh yeah.
Now, with that said, and if you don't mind me just going on just a small tangent here,
go for it.
If if the technology that we have today is used incorrectly, which it is often, with the auto tune and all that stuff, then somebody might say, well, computers have destroyed the music industry these days. Computers have destroyed, well, and I have to correct that statement to say that people have destroyed music by using the computers the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And you can take, if you know what you're doing, you can take a computer and the right software and make a magnificent recording. Technology can be used so awesomely if it's not abused. And although we have we have access to so much more convenience these days. I mean, you got unlimited amount of tracks now that you can record with. Mm-hmm. We have better microphones, and we have all this digital reverb and all this stuff that sounds great. I mean, let's face it, there's some great sounds out there.
Oh yeah.
If you use this stuff correctly, you can get some really great recordings. I've done it myself. I'm not a recording engineer per se, but if I can just little old me sit down here and make a good sounding recording, which I've done, then imagine what the big guys can do, you know. Yeah. And if they're not cutting corners and using auto-tune and all that stuff, then you know, you've got something there worth listening to. I just had to say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
thank you.
It doesn't really have much to do with vinyl, but it's just some, you know, it's music. So
well, I think it's the flip side of the conversation, because digital technology has provided leaps and bounds of advancement just in terms of accessibility to making music, and that's
absolutely,
it's the great equalizer, so to speak.
I mean, we wouldn't have, you know, 3/4 of the music out there that we have today, especially, again, if I again may refer to, you know, my own experiences where I was a songwriter for many years, mm-hmm. and there's no way that my songs would be public right now. They wouldn't even be recorded right now if it wasn't for mm-hmm. some of today's technology.
There you go.
And so now, guess what? They're out there for download. That wouldn't be possible without today's technology. They'd be sitting in a closet somewhere on a tape, you know.
Absolutely.
So there's, you know, it's like, well, how come if you're such an analog freak, then why are you using a digital reverb?
Yeah.
Well, because I don't have room for an analog reverb. I don't have a room big enough.
I don't have an echo chamber. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's why you've got this little box over there that does it just great.
Just fantastically.
If it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have it
in a way
at all.
That's so easy to control and make expressive.
Yeah. So there's pros and cons to everything, you know. And who wouldn't want a great big, huge echo chamber to have as their echo, you know? But it just can't always. So it's either you do it in a box or you don't do it at all. That's all. I mean, it's pretty simple. Yeah. So
good times.
Awesome. Well, you know, I think we've been talking for over an hour, which is crazy because it doesn't feel that long at all.
Oh,
but we
it's
should
been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thank you for coming on and
you're very
chatting
welcome.
with us.
I'm honored. Thank you guys for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a blast.
Well, thank you. Is there where can people find you? You got your YouTube channel? Is there anywhere else?
Sure. My vinyl, my YouTube vinyl channel is just called Vinyl TV, and that's just Vinyl Space TV. So if you search in YouTube for Vinyl TV, you'll find it. You'll recognize me. I have white hair. Okay. So if you watch one of my videos on if it's a guy with long white hair, it's me. So, and I do have another YouTube channel called Craig Tube, which is unrelated to vinyl. It's more for beer making and cooking and stuff like that. So it's called Craig CRAIG Tube, and that's my other channel on YouTube. So those are the two ways that you can find me. So.
Sounds like you've got something for everybody.
I like to have fun with a lot of things, and I like to teach people stuff and hear what they come up with, and just share my ideas and get their ideas, and that improves my life as well. And sharing ideas, just like we just did today in this interview. It's
exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah,
so,
that's why we do it.
Yeah. So thank you so much, guys, for having me on, and good luck with the rest of your shows. And I will certainly be listening in on you. If
Thank
you
you.
don't mind.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.